We have, for years, wanted to find a new way into Blade. We love that character. We love that world. Now with Doctor Strange and the supernatural elements coming into the MCU, it felt like we could definitely start exploring that.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Charlie. Marvel just announced the new Blade reboot movie just lost another director, and they're delaying the movie indefinitely again until they get everything figured out, making it the most delayed movie Marvel has ever had. They're breaking new records. They announced it officially at Comic-Con 2019, and since then, there's been several versions of the movie script, each with wildly different plots for the movie and the characters. Now multiple directors have come and gone. By the time they get around to actually making it, Mahershala Ali is going to look like this old man version of himself during True Detective. Most of you will see the irony of that situation using the True Detective example of him being the old version because Stephen Dorff also starred on that with him. He was in the original Blade movie with Wesley Snipes as Deacon Frost. The circle of Easter eggs is now complete. They should just release the first Blade movie and just call it the new Blade movie. I know there's a ton of questions about what Marvel's big problem has been that's kept them from actually making this movie the past 5 years, like kills vampires, Daywalker, what's the big problem? How hard can it be to release a vampire movie? Ryan Coogler is even doing his own version of one of the original Blade scripts from the early versions of the movie with Michael B. Jordan, Killmonger, over at Warner Brothers and just calling the movie something slightly different. So they're basically making a version of the Blade movie before Marvel makes a version of the Blade movie.
Thought we wouldn't notice, but we did.
We've learned most of what's actually going on behind the scenes at Marvel, so we'll break it all down, including what all the different versions of the movie were going to be and when they kept changing it and how they changed. If you're brand new to the channel, be sure to subscribe to get all the videos. When they do eventually wind up releasing it, of course I will do new videos about the Blade movie. We all might be like 30 years older when that happens, but I'll be doing videos then still. As for right now, Mahershala Ali is still attached to be the new version of Blade, still supposed to show up in a couple other upcoming projects like the animated Marvel Zombies series. But his lawyer actually recently commented that this weird 5, now 6-year delay when we get to next year is the first time something this crazy has happened to him personally in Hollywood, where they signed the actor with a giant trash bag of money, then somehow never actually got around to actually being able to make the movie. And it seems like up to this point, their big sticking point, like the big problem has been the actual script itself, like the way the movie is actually going to go down. Like I said, what is the huge problem? Man fights vampires, and for some reason, Marvel has had a problem with that. The other good example of a phenomenon like this you recognize is The Rock when he was cast as Black Adam at DC. He actually signed on to play Black Adam back in 2007 with Warner Brothers. They weren't actually able to make that movie until 2022. Right now, he's still probably the current record holder for something like that, but at the rate that Marvel is going, Blade might actually beat him. Here's the official timeline for when everything happened, what happened, how the movie changed, why Marvel canceled each version, then restarted with new writers, directors several times, completely new story. Way back in 2019, in the time before times, back before the pandemic, the dark times, at Marvel's Comic-Con panel, Kevin Feige unveils Marvel Phase 4. This is right after Avengers Endgame came out. Marvel riding really high. They made so much money on Endgame. Now, there's a lot you could say about Marvel Phase 4 in retrospect. Those movies and shows probably get clowned on the most of everything that Marvel released after Avengers Endgame, but there were some bright spots, like you have Spider-Man No Way Home, Tobey Maguire, Andrew Garfield coming back, Loki Season 1, WandaVision, Shang-Chi, Moon Knight Season 1. This is before the pandemic delays, mind you. That's why the release dates on all these look different during the Comic-Con announcements. How naive we all were, we thought these would come out without big delays. But after he reveals all these, he announces the new Blade movie. It was like the special surprise of Comic-Con, like, oh, and by the way, we have a little movie that's coming. Huge deal. Everybody went crazy when he brought Mahershala Ali out on stage. They put Blade hats on because that's Kevin Feige's big thing, wearing different hats based on the thing they're working at the moment. Everybody loved it, finally doing a new Blade again. Most people at the time remembered that Mahershala Ali was Cottonmouth from Luke Cage, so everybody's like, wait a minute, 2 characters inside the Marvel Universe. There's actually a number of examples of that now. Technically, if you consider Oscar Isaac, he's playing many different versions of the characters because he's Moon Knight with a bunch of different personalities. Kevin Feige explained how he wound up as the new Blade, though. He said that Mahershala Ali approached him after winning his Oscars, multiple Oscars, specifically asking to play the new version of Blade, and his answer was basically, oh hell yeah. But at the time they announced this, Kevin Feige didn't give a release date because they had just started working on the very first version of the script. His first actual appearance as the Blade character in the MCU was during that Eternals post-credit scene in 2021. You have to remember, originally, that movie would have released at the end of 2020 before the delayed movies, all because of the pandemic. But he appears to Kit Harington's Black Knight in his uncle's castle from the comics in a voiceover-only cameo scene, like you don't actually see him on screen, you just hear his voice. As he's in the middle of opening the case, holding the ebony blade passed down through his family, hearing the whispers from the blade, the curse of the blade itself, which the Eternals characters had mentioned earlier in the movie because of its origin during the time of Camelot and King Arthur. Now, the reason why he asked him if he's ready for the sword, like, are you sure you're ready for that, is because it means taking up the curse of the ebony blade. I've done a billion videos about the Black Knight lore and what's going on with the curse, how it affects him in present day. But because Blade, who was born with his vampire abilities in the 1920s, grew up knowing Dane Whitman's uncle, his grandfather before him, who both wielded the ebony blade and both succumbed to the curse. The blade itself has also had a very storied history in the MCU since the time of the original Black Knight and the time of Camelot, the Sir Percy Black Knight. They would have covered some of that history of the ebony blade and Dane Whitman's family during the first version of the Blade movie because a lot of it was meant to take place back in the 1920s. The blade itself was meant to appear in the movie as a really big plot point. Remember I said that Ryan Coogler and Michael B. Jordan were making a version of Blade over at Warner Brothers? Their version is kind of based on one of the original scripts, this version of Blade that was going to take place in the 1920s. So when Marvel did this Mahershala Ali Blade post-credit scene during the Eternals, it was meant to be a standard style post-credit scene that Marvel puts in their movies, teasing what you would see in one of the next movies. At the time, they were planning to release that version of the Blade movie around 2022. Then the first round of delays happened on all the movies because of the pandemic that pushes Blade to 2023 by default. But apparently in that original version of the movie, which is kind of infamous now, Mahershala Ali supposedly rejected the pitch because the Blade character had seemingly been pushed to the side, become a secondary character in his own movie, say like his daughter from the comics who were supposed to be featured in the movie at some point, in other secondary characters like the villain, for instance, the Lilith character. The report on the first version of that movie is that there was very little Blade in the actual Blade movie. Like I said, the main villain would have been a version of Lilith played by Mia Goth instead of Dracula. There were a lot of rumors about them doing Dracula in some of the movies at some point. That movie would have taken place in the 1920s, but also a little bit in present day, mostly depicting his past for his origin story in the present day in the history of the Ebony Blade. In the past, they would have seen Lilith trying to take the Ebony Blade and command its power, raising an army, eventually defeated by Blade and his allies. Kit Harington's Black Knight was supposed to show up during the present-day portions of the movie, like he would also crossed over into that movie, but in full Black Knight form. Then some of the first big changes to the movie happened. They removed a lot of the stuff with Blade's daughter. Kit Harington's Black Knight was also taken out of the present-day portions of the movie, and a lot of the movie was just taking place during the 1920s. Mahershala Ali keeps rejecting their scripts like they're not good enough for him. Whatever's happening, whatever problem Marvel's happening with the story. They burned through a couple more writers in the time since then. Months turned into years. Myth turned into legend. Like this gets into a Lord of the Rings kind of problem. Marvel and Disney then start having their financial problems that you heard about the last couple years with their big slowdown on the releases of the movies and the TV shows. They completely re-engineer the way they're making movies and shows and start focusing more on quality over quantity. That winds up causing some stuff to be delayed even further out. Blade movies to 2024, then they get pushed to 2025 again. And even though they just lost another director, apparently they're sticking with the version of the movie that they wrote and just searching for another director, but the story itself is sticking. They announced that they'd turned it into a rated R movie, reduced the budget a lot because they wanted it to be rated R. There's some marketing issues, them making their money back and some risks. So if you're not a Deadpool movie and you're not guaranteed to make like $1 billion, it's a little bit harder to make a very, very expensive rated R movie. But here's the good part of that. The movie itself will have more of the vibe, the scope of the original Wesley Snipes Blade. They only spent $45 million making that original movie, and it's still a banger. It is like the godfather of the MCU. The MCU would not exist if Blade was not a success. The brand new version of the Blade movie has a budget of around $100 million, which, considering inflation from the late 90s, is about the budget that they would have spent on the original Blade movie had that been made today. Most of it, I believe, is meant to be set in present-day MCU and is still supposed to set up that Midnight Suns team-up movie that they're doing. Blade is supposed to be one of the leaders of that team. The other real big question everybody has been asking since 2019 when they announced the new Blade movie is Wesley Snipes coming back for cameo scenes as his version of Blade, or even just cameo scenes at all, like in a guest role as another character, like bringing him back as the new Whistler or something similar. The odds of that are pretty good, like him just coming back at all, because we also have Avengers Secret Wars, where apparently tons and tons of other people that aren't going to be in Deadpool and Wolverine are also coming back. Wesley Snipes was even hinting about coming back on his social media, but he was talking more about Deadpool and Wolverine. We'll see if he winds up in that movie. It is so bizarre that Marvel has had so much trouble just doing a basic vampire movie. Like, the premise should be pretty simple. Dude kills vampires. Boom. Done. If there's any other questions you have about what's going on with Blade, just write them below in the comments and I'll add them to my future bonus videos. We'll hear more about the future of the character later this year, but one is coming Sunday. Click here for that video. I'll update the link as soon as I post the full version, and click here for my new Deadpool and Wolverine Juggernaut video. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.